Romans 8:28. We know that God works all things together for good for them who love God and are called according to His purpose. This is an incredible verse of Scripture. Just incredible. It tells us many things. Many things. But one thing it tells us is that God is working all things together for good. What is all things? All things. For them who love God and are called according to His purpose. That's just another verse that shows the sovereignty of God. Yep, I said it. God is in charge. He is all-powerful, all-knowing. He knows it all, past, present, and future. And He is in charge of it all because He has all power. There is not one molecule that's outside of His control. All things are subject to Him. We were talking about the man in John chapter 9 in the prior video. And we're asking questions like why the pain and the suffering and the agony. You know, why do these things occur? Why the seemingly meaningless, tragic occurrences in our lives and in the lives of those around us? And we were talking about this passage in John chapter 9, how, you know, this baby, going back to when he was a baby, he was born blind. And this would have seemed like just a complete and total tragedy. But we having the hindsight of Scripture, we can see that this man was healed. And Jesus lets us in on why. He answers the question why. Why this man was born blind and lived his whole life up until the moment that he was healed. Why this happened? Why was he blind? Why was he having to go through the pain, you know, of bumping into things and falling over? He probably had, you know, he could have had broken bones and things, just suffering throughout his entire life with this blindness. And they asked him why. Why was it this man or his parents? Did they sin? Is that why? Jesus said no, sin had nothing to do with it. Neither this man nor his parents sinned. You know, why did this happen? Why the suffering? And Jesus answers the question. He said it was so that the works of God could be manifested in him. That's why. So this whole man's life of suffering and pain, and agony, struggle, was so that the light of God and the glory of God would be, and the healing of God and the purpose of God was so that Jesus would be manifested to the world as to his identity and who he is. So this man's tragic condition was by no means senseless or meaningless. There was a purpose, and it was God's purpose. And you and I need to understand that in our lives when we struggle or there's suffering or pain, God has a purpose in it. He's working things out together for the good. Even though it may not seem good at the moment, the ultimate goal of God is for our good. And if we struggle and fight and complain and grumble and become bitter, we might find ourselves fighting against God. Right? I wonder if that happened in anybody else's life in the Bible that we know about. We're going to talk about him in just a few minutes if I have time, or in the next video. See, the disciples made a huge mistake in assuming that sin had to be the reason for this man to be born blind, or his parents' sin. They were wrong. They jumped to a conclusion and they were wrong. However, they weren't ignorant and stupid in this mistake. See, why did they assume that there was a relationship between sin and suffering in the case of this blind man in John chapter 9? Well, there's a good reason. It was because, I'm probably not going to have time to get into it much in this video, but it was simple. It was because there was relationship, or how do I put this? The reason for all suffering in this world was due to sin. That was what was going through their mind. And this is true. This is true. The ultimate reason for all suffering is due to sin. Indirectly or directly. They knew that if you get rid of sin, then you get rid of suffering. They understood that in this world there is a link between evil and tragedy, between sin and suffering. That's what was going through their mind. That's why they asked, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he would be born blind? We're going to get further into this, but stay with me. Take everything I say with a grain of salt, though.